We're getting close to our final comments, and I wanted to hold my comments and ask one of our leaders, Dr. Ron Daniels from the Institute for Black World, to come and give us a charge. I think we have him listed as the Gearing Up for Action, and that's what we all need to be doing. That's why we're all here today. How do we gear up for action and put all of these efforts and all of these emotions and all of these feelings into action? And how do we move forward? Because it's not just about Friday and Saturday, but it's about how we move forward as we go. And then I want to thank some special people for being here. Dr. Ron Daniels.
Well, thank you very much, Dorothy. This has been a very powerful experience, a very moving experience. And I think when people are moved by the narrative, by the testimonies, that sets the basis for people to act. So I first and foremost just want to thank Dorothy Johnson Spike, this heroic, visionary, warrior woman, for her extraordinary leadership. They say where there is no vision, the people perish. So the testimonies speak for themselves. I mean, she has singularly, by force of will, overcome the pain to become a model, to become a person around which a movement is galvanizing. So let's give her another round of applause. To all the mothers who have suffered and yet have turned that suffering into a triumph, really, in terms of your utter determination. As one of the mothers said, that my son did not die in vain. That seems to be that's collectively a metaphor for what we heard this morning. Let's give yourselves a big round. I also just want to quickly say that this has been extraordinarily successful. And it's been successful because of one of the most important political leaders in this country, the Honorable Danny Davis. Now, I just want to say something. I've been through a lot of these, a lot of sessions like this. Rarely does a member of Congress, and this is I'm not saying this in a negative sense, because they have lots of things to do. But the fact that Congressman Danny Davis stayed here for the majority of this, and has a staffer in the room to monitor this, means that we didn't waste our time. Danny Davis is going to be on this. That's the kind of person he is. So let's give him a round of applause. I also want to give a shout out to another very important person in the room, Bob Leonard Dunstan, who is the President Emeritus of the National Association of Black Social Workers, but he also coordinates the Black Family Summit of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, because he has this relationship with Congressman Danny Davis. But he also has a relationship with a number of organizations and people who spoke in this room today. He played an instrumental role in helping to pull this together. Let's give Bob a done. Now quickly, let me just say that, taking a page from Nana Pat Newton, I think we have to, it's important to see this holistically, and that's what I think she worked to do. The way we have framed it in the Institute of the Black World 21st Century is to say that we have a state of emergency in Black America. We say in America's dark ghettos. It is a function of several things. So the pain of the homicide and the murders is a function of the state of emergency. And by the way, one of the most important things that we can do is on the one hand, Black Lives Matter is the killing of our people, both women and men, by the police and the policing authorities, and then the internal murders that are taking place. And when I do a little radio talk show and you hear this, well, how come we're not as agitated about one as the other? Well, they're sort of two sides of a similar phenomenon. We have to address them both. We have to make that connection. Black Lives Matter have to mean that we're not allowing police externally to kill our people, but we are also healed to the point that we're not killing ourselves. So we have to make that connection. We need that Black Lives Matter to mean all of those things. But I was reflecting and I'm just going to do this quickly. I'm from the Hill District of Pittsburgh. In the Hill District of Pittsburgh, and August Wilson's Hill District of Pittsburgh, that's back in the day. And I was thinking about what's the difference between back in the day and today. See, it's not like we've never had violence in our community before, right? I mean, we had gangs in the Hill District. You know, we fought in the Hill District. All stuff was going down. But I can't recall, well, it was, you know, like people shooting crap in the neighborhoods, you know, literally shooting crap. That's why I never wanted to do that again, because I just remember people fighting over that, whatever. But rarely, ever, do I remember. In fact, I don't remember ever in the Hill District a young person being killed. I don't remember this murdering taking place. We fought, but I don't remember the murders taking place. Something has changed between back in the day and today. And that's a part of our analysis that seems to me we have to take that into account.
That's true.
A part of it has been the fabric of our communities have been ripped apart. Not by our own doing, but because of social forces that over which we have virtually no control, but which we must come to control in order to mitigate and overcome the damage. One of the things that happened is in the Hill District of Pittsburgh, we had the steel mills. The steel mills were there. One of the conversations I had with Danny Davis, we were talking about this when we came in. We broke lunch one day. He came to me, Sister Ivor Carruthers, and he said that it's interesting. In my district, all of the major industries are gone. Work has disappeared. There are no jobs. Not only do we not have jobs, but many of you have referred to the fact that there has been also massive disinvestment in our community. There is no CETA program. There is no JEFTA program. There is no war on poverty. Some of you know what I'm talking about. The younger generation cannot recall because that's like back in the day now. There is massive disinvestment. What Moynihan called benign neglect is actually turned into blatant neglect in our communities. And so what we have is then disinvestment, deindustrialization, the failure to fulfill the unfulfilled civil rights, human rights agenda in terms of all the things that we were fighting for, but we got something else. We got something called the war on drugs. We got policing. Our communities being policed. And so it's interesting when SEMA talks about the fact that in a way what has happened is this country functions the same way. Every time there's a problem, it has a military solution. It doesn't see it in terms of a social, economic, it sees it as a military solution. So what we got was a military solution directed exclusively at our communities. And so ending the war on drugs and racially biased discriminatory policies and mass incarceration are all connected. We must be involved in all of this together. We have to end it. And we understand that intersection in terms of our moving forward. The other thing we have to understand too is what Brother Street was talking about in terms of the political realities. Because you see, these elections also matter. People who are talking about small government, let's think about that for a quick minute. These right-wing conservatives, these Tea Party people talking about limited government, small, what does that mean? Many times we're talking about the lack of services in our community. There are virtually no mental health services in our communities. In New York, Rikers Island, the jail is where many of the many of the people go to get mental health, then they're turned back out on the streets. Which means that, and we talk about this massive trauma that we're experiencing. So yes, the public health frame must mean that there must be a massive effort for reinvestment in our community because we need to be healed of the trauma. I mean, that's something that really we've got to educate ourselves first in turning to our community, our pastors, our community events, or our fraternities and sororities. I've just been so impressed recently in this discussion today about what this trauma means. So while we condemn how our people act, in some ways it is predictable that a violent society produces violent people. And then the trauma. And Seema, thank you so much for also expanding about how this means, what it means to our girls, because I was having a little, disproportionate men, but everybody experiences the trauma of walking across the blood, or all the other things that are happening, even if it's not the population, like males, who are being disproportionately affected. That understanding, it seems to me, is very critical in terms of that intervention. So we got to understand that it's about investment in our community. So I think there's 3 levels that we have to look at. One, internally, what are we going to do? And Dorothy and Mothers in Charge are doing a lot of the internal work. How do we heal ourselves? How do our institutions take charge and become much more responsible and accountable for we the people, our black people, and others as well? But first and foremost, charity begins at home and spreads abroad. Love thy neighbor as thyself. We have to begin to take better care of each other. We have to come to love each other more in our community. We have to love each other. We have to see each other and see in each other, what's that concept? And boom too. We must see in each other humanity in a way that perhaps we have been so traumatized by this that sometimes we now don't do. And that means the mentoring programs. That means the kind of things that you courageously do in terms of going into the prisons and facing people. I mean, what greater love could one have than to see that people who have actually committed the crimes are now faced with those who have been victimized and are embraced by them? I mean, I just can't imagine something more redemptive than that. But in some ways, it is that kind of transformative behavior that we as black people, who in fact, that's who we are as a people. That's right. That's who we've always been. That's right. When we're in our right mind. Somebody mentioned that earlier. When we have not been disturbed, when we're not off track mentally, that's who we are. We are a just, resilient, loving people. So we have to do that internally. Then we must collectively confront the private sector institutions. Whatever they are, the banks, the lending institutions, the social service institutions, which almost become neo-colonial forces because we are the products of them, but very often the people who control them don't look like us. I'm not saying that negatively, but I'm just saying there's a way in which if we are the victims, if we are the ones who are most affected, then we ought to be the ones who are in charge and who are running these institutions primarily in our own hands. And then finally, it is about this courageous effort to make this issue a national public health issue. It is to raise it to the level of a moral and political crisis. A moral and political crisis. But before I do that, let me just back up. Let me back up on the internal for just a minute. Because the other thing we have to do internally is this. There also must be, and I think this is spoken to, a spiritual and cultural foundation. See, what we didn't have in the Hill District of Pittsburgh was we weren't really into the African-centeredness. We really weren't into understanding the necessity that in a society where white supremacy reigns, we have internalized oppression. We didn't quite understand that. We understand that now. So we must therefore have culture, our own sense of who we are as African people and as black people. We can never be too black. We can't overdose on blackness. Because that's a part of the scripture about it. And then spirituality. It may not necessarily be religious, but that spirituality, a sense that there's something greater than ourselves. Because that sense of being that something greater than ourselves means that we can be better. We can be more than what we think we can be. And we have a sense of so I skipped over that in my notes. I just wanted, because that's foundational. We need a moral, spiritual, cultural offensive internally as black people. And by the way, when we do that, the world sits at our feet in a positive sense. The world emulates us. So finally, public policy. And I think you're off to a great start. Because Congressman Danny Davis is going to be on this. He will spread it to other members of the Congressional Black Caucus. But there has to be this kind of mass movement, this mass push that takes place. And at the end of the day, there is no escaping the fact that this country has to invest more. It is utterly criminal to spend X numbers of billions of dollars every month in Afghanistan and in Iraq and not have the resources in order to rebuild our society, rebuild our own. That is utterly criminal. So we have to break out of this box because we keep fighting for the resources. We keep trying to act like we can do this within the confines. No, we have to break out of the box. The world must come to know that we can call it big government. I don't care what it's called. We need more resources, more efficient, effective utilization of America's resources to heal black families and communities, to heal people, period. It cannot be done. The mayors can't do it alone. Because the resources are not there the way they used to be, because even as we speak now, the committees are meeting. The psychopaths in suits are meeting, trying to cut back on food stamps. They're cutting back on housing. They're cutting back and we're trying to fight with them. We can't, it cannot be done. We got to break out of that box. And there's no better voices than the mothers, the testimony, the narrative that speaks truth to power. Speaks truth to power. So you are at the cutting edge of a movement that is irreversible, that will not be turned back, that because we will not be moved. We will not be moved because you have taken your pain and in a prophetic way are speaking truth to power. And we in this student of the black world 21st century who believe in collaboration, and that's the other thing that's so beautiful. One of the things that we believe in is collaboration. It's not just our singular, independent, egoistic little organizations by themselves. It is the collective power of people coming together to collaborate that will be the other one trying. So give your selves a big round of applause and stand with me. And nothing will stand in the way of mothers in charge.